King Solomon. The story. After reigning as Israel's king for 40 years, David was now bedridden and at the end of his life. Knowing his father was in his last days, David's fourth oldest son, Adonijah, decided to claim Israel's kingship for himself, as he was next in line. Adonijah's claims were backed by David's loyal and long-term commander and nephew Joab, and Abiathar the priest. Yet Zadok the priest, Nathan the prophet, and Shimei, who initially hated David, along with David's men and others, rejected Adonijah's claims. After Adonijah offered sacrifices to officiate his claims, Nathan the prophet visited Bathsheba, informing her that Adonijah was trying to steal David's crown, and to quickly secure the throne for his son Solomon. At some point before, Solomon was promised to become David's successor. Bathsheba immediately reminded David of his promise to their son, and at once David publicly announced for the priests and officials to anoint Solomon as Israel's new king, ending Adonijah's power grab as his followers abandoned him for Solomon. Before his death, David instructed Solomon to remain faithful to God and his commands, and have Israel do the same. He also instructed Solomon to execute Joab and Shimei for their crimes towards David and Israel, and show the sons of Barzillai the Gileadite kindness, as they did right by David and Israel for helping David flee from Absalom during their conflict. David dies and is buried with his people after reigning over Israel for 40 years, and Solomon officially begins his reign as king, starting by fulfilling his father David's final wish, to execute all those unfaithful to Israel and exalt those loyal. The first was Adonijah for his power grab at Israel's kingship, solidified after Bathsheba requested Solomon give him Abishag as a wife, which Solomon took as him returning to his old ways. Next, Solomon had Joab executed for following Abijah, killing Abner, Amasa, and Absalom, along with innocent blood. And lastly was Shimei for the insults and curses he hurled at David while he was in Bahurim. Sometime soon after fulfilling his father David's final wishes, King Solomon was in Gibeon, offering sacrifices to God, 1,000 in fact, for himself and the Israelites, as his heart was fully after God. Because of Solomon's loyalty, God appeared to Solomon in a dream and promised to give him anything he asked for. Solomon chose wisdom to lead the Israelite people during his time as king. God liked Solomon's humble answer and rewarded him with immense wealth and honours, placing Solomon above all other kings from the surrounding nations. Solomon sacrificed to God following this to thank him for his blessing. Solomon's wisdom was challenged when two women approached him with a problem. Both women had just given birth, and one of them had killed their child by lying on it, then took the living child for herself and left the other woman with the deceased. The woman whose child was alive realized her son was gone and that her friend had stolen him, claiming him as hers. To settle this disagreement, Solomon declared the living child would be cut in half, with each woman receiving one half. One was fine with the decision, but the other wasn't, begging Solomon to let her friend keep him for herself. However, this was part of Solomon's plan, as he officially commanded the emotional woman to obtain the child, because her outburst proved the kid was hers. This situation became widely known throughout Israel, and all the people knew God was with Solomon. As God promised, King Solomon was blessed with incredible wisdom and immense wealth and honours. Solomon was smarter than anyone in Israel and the surrounding nations, even those from the east and the famous thinkers of the day. He authored over 3,000 proverbs and 1,005 songs. He spoke confidently about all and every subject, with many coming from near and far to hear Solomon's wisdom. He had 40,000 stalls of horses for his chariots and 12,000 horsemen. Solomon also enjoyed 30 cores of fine flour, 60 cores of meal, 10 fat oxen, 20 pasture-fed oxen, and 100 sheep, besides deer, gazelles, roebucks, and fattened fowl each day. 4 years after establishing himself as king, Solomon decided to construct God a temple, something his father David wanted to do but couldn't because of his warrior status. King Solomon formed a strong alliance with the king of Tyre, Hiram, like David did during his reign, for supplies and workmen to help build the temple, with Solomon providing 20,000 cores of wheat and 20 cores of beaten oil per year in return. Along with Hiram's men and the Gibeonites, known as master builders, Solomon recruited 30,000 Israelite slaves to work on the temple, with 20,000 travelling to Lebanon to collect the wood used every 3 months, 70,000 men to transport the stone from the quarry to the site, 80,000 to mine it, and 3,300 of King Solomon's top men oversaw the project. Over 180,000 Israelites were involved in the build, and it was completed 7 years later. The team also built Solomon's home, which finished construction after 13 years of work. Following the construction of Israel's temple and the king's house, Solomon arranged for the Ark of the Covenant to be relocated to Israel's new temple, and organized a large gathering including the priests and elders to welcome its arrival. After dedicating the temple to God, King Solomon addressed the people, reminding them to stay loyal and faithful to God, as their ancestors and his father David did. He also worshipped God's power, greatness, and grandness, plus prayed for his fellow Israelites, asking God to forgive their sins, and protection from their enemies. Solomon continued his speech by officially dedicating Israel's temple to God through a prayer where he asked God to hear and act on his people's and those from outside Israel's cries for help, and for God to remain in the temple, acknowledging his faithfulness. Solomon closes his speech by solidifying all the points he made before, for God to protect and bless all who call on him. King Solomon and the Israelites concluded the ceremony by offering sacrifices consisting of 22,000 oxen and 120,000 sheep, before enjoying a massive feast in the presence of God. God appears to Solomon for the second time following the ceremony, warning Solomon not to let himself or the Israelites turn and follow their own path or worship the idols of the surrounding nations, because they will suffer severe consequences if they do. The Queen of Sheba heard of Solomon's immense wisdom and travelled to Jerusalem to test him with incredibly difficult questions. The Queen was impressed by Solomon's wisdom, as he answered all her questions correctly, and his way of seeing all he had in his kingdom. The Queen of Sheba concluded Solomon's greatness exceeded the reports, and she left Israel with many lavish gifts from King Solomon. Throughout his reign, Solomon acquired 666 talents, about 22 tons of gold every year, 200 large gold shields made from 600 shekels, with around $600,000 today, 300 shields made from 3 mias of gold, approximately $1,500 today. King Solomon had a great throne made from ivory and gold, with 6 steps from the base to the seat, a lion on each arm, and 12 lions on the steps, 6 on each side. All Solomon's cups, bowls, and things like that were gold, and he had 1,400 chariots and 12,000 horsemen. Solomon was the greatest king in terms of wisdom and wealth. Along with incredible material wealth and wisdom, Solomon acquired many wives and concubines, 700 wives and 300 concubines, all foreign, Moabites, Ammonites, Edomites, Sidonians, Hittites, and Pharaoh's daughter. Solomon's relationships with non-Israelites eventually caused him to start worshipping their gods instead of God, which caused God to almost dethrone Solomon for his disobedience, but didn't because of his promise to David to form an everlasting kingdom from his family. God still punishes Solomon for his idolatry by raising 2 adversaries against him, Hadad the Edomite and Rezon the Syrian, who Solomon frees from to Egypt. Nothing is known of Solomon's life after this, and he dies after reigning for 40 years. Digging deeper. We'll spend this section investigating some of the legends that surround Solomon. The first is from 1001 Nights, a collection of Middle Eastern folk tales composed over many centuries from Asia and North Africa, with the stories Aladdin and the Wonderful Lamp, Ali Baba and the 40 Thieves, and the 7 Voyages of Sinbad the Sailor, closely linked to this compilation. However, they aren't in the original version or existed before the collection. One of the stories is about King Solomon and describes how Solomon trapped a genie in a bottle and threw him into the sea after the genie upset him. The genie couldn't escape because the bottle was sealed with Solomon's seal, possibly from Solomon's legendary signet ring, and remained in the ocean until a fisherman discovered the bottle many centuries later. The protagonists from other stories in this collection sometimes use Solomon's words as encouragement when they are lost or in a foreign place. King Solomon is also linked to the Seal of Solomon, a legend popular in medieval mysticism, Jewish mysticism, Islamic mysticism, and Western occultism. The seal of Solomon is a mythical signet shaped like a pentagram or hexagram and used by Solomon to control the supernatural and speak with animals. Through Solomon's incredible wisdom and this description, the seal became a symbol of medieval and Renaissance magic, along with occultism and alchemy, and was featured on Nigeria's flag during British rule and potentially represented by the pentagram on Morocco's current flag. The seal of Solomon is also considered the original Star of David, a critical part of modern Judaism and present on Israel's current national flag. Lastly, there is the legend of King Solomon discovering a palace with no entrance while travelling by magic. He wanted to know if anyone lived there, so he commanded demons to ascend to the roof, where they found a 700-year-old eagle and its 900-year-old brother, with neither aware of an entrance to the palace. However, the two eagles' oldest brother, aged 1,300 years old, revealed the entrance was located on the west side but was barricaded by sand. Solomon removes the sand and finds the entrance. Inside he uncovers an idol with Greek, a language that didn't exist during Solomon's time and was developed around 1,000 years after he lived, according to experts. Written on a tablet inside the idol's mouth. The tablet read that the idol was of Shaddadad, the son of Ad, and was linked to 1,000,004 different ways, reigned over 1,000,000 cities, rode 1,000,000 horses and had 1,000,000 slaves, and killed 1,000,000 warriors. Yet with all his power and success, the idol couldn't escape death. There are many other legends about Solomon, but these are just some that paint him in a more interesting and unique light. What to learn? What should we take away from King Solomon's story? I believe it teaches us the importance of keeping our hearts and minds centered on God and His commands, not allowing things and ways of this world to overpower us and turn our priorities away from Him. Solomon started his reign as Israel's third, technically fourth king, on an extremely positive note, choosing wisdom to lead the Israelites instead of wealth, long life for himself, or the destruction of his enemies, using this wisdom to settle the dispute between the two women from 1 Kings 3, to write most of the Proverbs found in the book of Proverbs, and potentially even the book of Ecclesiastes. Yet because of his humility, God provided Solomon with everything listed above, which eventually led to Solomon turning from God, along with the multiple foreign women he was romantically involved with, who led him to worship their gods instead. Solomon's character changes dramatically over time. He begins loyal and faithful to God, but ends with a fractured and empty relationship with God, all because he allowed the material possessions and other people to distract him and shift from God. How does this apply to us today? We, like Solomon, will have times when the things of this world, or people who live by the world, will distract us and lead us away from God. There is nothing wrong with enjoying the material aspects of this life or associating with those not part of the Christian faith, but when you do, make sure not to let their ideas or the desires for more stuff corrupt you and lead you on a path away from God.